Shavua Tov, a good vach. Of course, we're devastated with the news of what happened in California, Chabad of San Diego. Someone lost their life. And sounds like a cliche, our hearts and our prayers are with them. Hashem should help we shouldn't know of any more troubles. Since it's the last night following the 8-day holiday of Pesach, I'd like to share a Pesach story with you. Around 190, 200 years ago, there lived a famous rabbi who was known as the Apter Rebbe, because he was the Rebbe in the city of Apt. And he was a very religious man, a very wise man, a very holy man. And one of the mitzvahs that he loved was the mitzvah of Pesach. And he was very, very particular to only use matzahs that he was involved in their production, to be sure they were 1,000,000% kosher. And these matzahs were put away very carefully in a bag and double wrapped and hanging from the ceiling to keep it away from anyone's hands or feet. And somehow, one Erev Pesach, when they came around from the community to ask every house to donate some matzahs to the poor, so one of the girls who worked in the house was asked to go to the matzah room and bring some matzahs to give to the poor. And she went, and the first matzahs that she saw were those matzahs that were specially made for the Rebbe for the Seder. She didn't know anything about it. She cut it down, and she gave it to the collectors. Later that night, as the rabbi was at the services and his wife, the Rebbitzin, was preparing for the Seder table, she went to the room to get the matzahs to put them into the Seder plate, and they were gone. And the brief investigation turned up that the matzahs were really gone, not to be seen again. She was frantic because the Rebbe was so particular about these matzahs that he had been involved with. He wouldn't eat anything else for the whole Pesach, any other matzahs. What was she supposed to do? In desperation, she just took some of the regular matzahs from the regular bakery and stuck them into the Rebbe's Seder plate. The Rebbe came home, very joyous, very exalted, very excited, and he immediately began to prepare his Seder plate and add all the things, the eggs and the bone and the maror, the bitter herbs, everything, and didn't seem to realize that these were not his matzahs. And the first Seder came, and the second Seder, and the whole 8 days of Pesach went by, and the Rebbitzin gave a big sigh of relief that the secret was safe with her and her assistant. Her husband hadn't discovered the problem, and life is good. Well, 3 days after Pesach, there's a knock on the Rebbe's door. And in comes a young married man, newly married, and he comes into the Rebbe and he says, Rebbe, you must help me. I need to divorce my wife. The Rebbe is shocked. What do you mean? You're just a newlywed person. Why do you want to divorce your wife? What did she do? And he says, she just doesn't get Pesach. She doesn't know how to be careful to keep the matzah away from the water and how to do things right. And she's just, if she can't get Pesach right, who knows what else she's not going to get right. I can't see myself living with such a person. So the Rebbe said, please have a seat, young man. And he asked his wife to come in. The Rebbitzin comes in the room, and the Rebbe says to her, please tell this young man what kind of matzahs I used this Pesach. His wife, the Rebbitzin, begins to shake. It turns white. What do you mean matzahs? What matzahs? And the Rebbe said, please, I'm not upset. Just please tell this young man the story about my matzahs. And the Rebbitzin realizes that her husband is aware of what happened. So she says, when it came time to prepare the matzahs, we realized that the Rebbe's special matzahs had been given away, and I felt I had no choice but to substitute regular, not first class, best matzahs that my husband is used to eating every year and used to making himself and involved in it. So the Rebbe turns to this young man and he says, for 8 days of Pesach, I ate those matzahs, although I was aware they were not mine, because I didn't want to upset my wife, didn't want to make her feel bad. I sensed immediately these were not my matzot. Obviously, there was no other choice. There were no other matzot. What would I gain by complaining or yelling or berating and other fancy words? And therefore, I chose to be quiet. See, now he again turns to this young man and says, if I could eat the lowest quality of matzahs for 8 days in order not to upset my wife, in order not to hurt my wife's feelings, what the heck is wrong with you? He didn't say that because I doubt Rebbes in those days said what the heck. But anyways, the Rebbe said, don't be silly about silly things. Go and have a great life with a great wife. So, I think the point I want to say is not that the Rebbe was holy enough to know what he had and what he didn't have. But imagine a Rebbe to whom every mitzvah was so important. And this was a mitzvah that he had personally been involved in the making of those matzahs to be at the highest standard of kosher, because that's who he was. But the second he realized that any kind of complaining or talking will accomplish nothing but hurting someone's feelings, not just someone, but his partner in life, he knew what he had to do, and he did what he had to do. So one certain lesson, we know the matzah doesn't rise because the matzah stands for the opposite of ego. Let's keep the ego down, and let's keep our smiles up, and let's keep reaching out to people in a positive, friendly way. Have a great week and a great life.